Brian Scalabrine covers the Celtics for NBC Sports Boston, Yahoo Sports, SiriusXM, NBA Radio back on the program. Brian, how are you today?
Dan, I thought you were going to ban me after I thought that Toronto actually had a chance against the Cavs, but glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's clear that up because you gave a cryptic message right at the very end of the last time I talked to you. Hey, let's talk, after the Toronto series with Cleveland, as if you thought LeBron was going to lose.
Yeah, I actually did, and I thought what we're seeing right now, and I know he had like the 42-point triple-double, but it doesn't feel the same way as some of the dominating performances in the past have been. But I thought that Toronto would not be afraid, and they would be able to challenge Cleveland and sort of the same MO as Indiana, but like let's just scrap that. Those guys were not ready for that for whatever reason, mentally, physically, not having the bodies, but let's switch it over to the Celtics, who clearly seem to be ready to dethrone the King.
All right, what happens in Game 3?
I'm expecting Cleveland to win both games, but I've got the Celtic team wrong a lot. Like from the beginning of the year, everything is like blowing my mind. You have rookies coming in and having impacts throughout the season. Developing, getting better as the year goes along. Where typically a rookie hits the wall and sort of falls off. Like Jason Tatum improves, Jaylen Brown improves. So with these guys, the one thing that everyone has to understand, and we value offense. Like we'll value LeBron's 42-point triple-double, and we'll talk about it in historic fashion. But we don't necessarily value guys who defend their position and limit rotation on the defensive end, limit the fact that you don't have to be scrambling, that you can guard guys one-on-one. And that's what the Celtics have, and I don't think that that's going away. It didn't go away in the Milwaukee series. It was definitely there for the Philly series. And now so far, these first two games, these guys have sat down and guarded their yard better than most, and up there with the likes of the Warriors, who also do a really good job of guarding guys one-on-one.
Who's the most valuable Celtic player?
Man, that's a great question. If I had to pick one, it'd be Al Horford, just because so many things run through him, and he has versatility. Like the idea. Like I like Baines. He was rated number one in the defensive rating in the NBA, but you can't just switch everything. You can't switch Baines onto LeBron. With Al, he can rebound his position. He can guard a J.R. Smith off a down screen. He can guard a LeBron off the dribble. So defensively, Al Horford does all the things that you would want from a center. Now, he's not like exceptional at any of them, but just the idea that you can do all that makes him exceptional. And then offensively, when the ball runs through him, the Celtics seem to move the ball a lot better side to side. So right now with Kyrie out, I would have to say it's Al Horford.
You have a head coach in Brad Stevens who didn't receive any votes for Coach of the Year, but it feels like the media wants to give him credit for getting his team this far. And then I've seen some recent comments, including one by the former Celtic Robert Parrish, like, hey, we're giving him way too much credit here. He hadn't won anything. So where do we stand with Brad Stevens' role with Boston's success?
Well, I mean, he's a great coach, and he puts guys in a great position. But I feel like it's a little demeaning when people don't give credit to the players. Like, as good of a coach as Brad Stevens is, like, when you have guys that defend the way that these guys defend, and maybe give a lot of credit to Brad and his coaching staff for teaching these guys like how to defend and how not to overreact to certain things. And all he has to do is focus on, putting guys in a position to be successful without compromising their weaknesses. And he does a really good job with that. But I think it's a little disrespectful to the players when they win. All the credit goes to Brad. The credit should go to the players who do the work day in and day out.
Well, how about Danny Ainge, who brought all these players in?
Sure.
Does he deserve more credit than Brad Stevens does?
No, I mean, I don't. Like, I think in the Celtic organization, you can look from ownership down. Ownership has to sign off on an Isaiah trade for Kyrie Irving. They have to know that Kyrie Irving is going to be a $37, $38 million a year player somewhere down the road, and that you're giving up a pick. Danny Ainge has to convince them, no, this is the way to go. Kyrie's a special player. Danny Ainge has to sign off. The ownership has to sign off on trading away, your two Hall of Fame players who just brought a championship for, all these Brooklyn picks that are coming your way. So, and then you got to pick the right guys along the way. and get scrutinized for not making a Jimmy Butler trade at the trade deadline, and by the national media that Danny Ainge is making the wrong moves by not making moves. And so everyone has to be on the same page. And whether the move is right or wrong, ownership's going to back Ainge, Ainge's going to back Stevens, and Stevenson is going to back both those guys. So it's hard to win in the NBA, especially if you don't have like the Kevin Durants and the LeBrons, or go down the list, Kawhi Leonard, whoever. But if you definitely got to be on the same page. And I think right now the Celtics, more than most organizations, seem to be all locked in together with the same goals in mind.
Brian Scalabrine, NBC Sports Boston, joining us, Dan Patrick Show. If Boston had Kyrie and Gordon Hayward, finish that sentence. Then
they would have a really good chance of beating the Warriors. I just don't know offensively if they have enough. I mean, we saw that. It was ridiculous watching them play Houston, where James Harden actually was doing his thing, and Houston was playing pretty well. I get it. Everyone can always play better. But like the idea that the Warriors had all these guys, and they have Kevin Durant out there like at the end of a shot clock making shots. I think this year, I think everyone has to believe that they're unbeatable. But with Kyrie and Gordon Hayward, I think it was like gives Boston a chance to beat them. But I will say this, like with those guys going down, like it allowed a lot of guys on the team to grow, and maybe that's the path to winning a championship next year. Maybe it's like a silver lining to these guys' development. And if these guys can go to the finals and get that experience, it does seem very likely that they can go next year, and the Warriors stay the same and go next year and actually compete, and people give the Celtics an actual chance to beat the Warriors.
Brian, good to talk to you. Have fun in the series, and if your Celtics get to the finals, we'll check in with you again.
You got it. See you, Dan.
That's Brian Scalabrine. He's the White Mamba, NBC Sports Boston.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.